Hey guys, tonight we head deep into the dust-choked streets of ancient Babylon, a place where even your sniffles could get blamed on an invisible demon with a vendetta. You're here, maybe by accident, maybe as punishment from the gods, and your nose is already leaking like a broken irrigation ditch. The sun's barely down, the air is thick with smoke from oil lamps, and someone nearby is chanting to a statue with too many eyes. You sneeze. A priest glares. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment telling me your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little caravan stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're trudging through a narrow alley of sun-baked, mud-brick homes. It's early evening in Babylon, around 2000 BCE, and your throat feels like you swallowed a cactus. The common cold might be common, but to these folks, it's a cosmic punishment, one that comes with runny consequences. And let's be honest, you've had better days. Maybe it was the dust storm, or maybe you shouldn't have eaten that lukewarm lentil stew offered by the old woman with no eyebrows. Either way, your sinuses are staging a rebellion. You duck into the courtyard of a small home, the kind with reed mats and a faint smell of goat. The family here, your hosts for tonight, are concerned, not about your comfort, about what spirit has entered you, because that's how illness works here. Ancient Babylonians didn't believe colds came from germs. No one's whispering virus under their breath. Instead, a sniffle means a demon slipped inside your body, maybe through your ear while you slept, or your mouth while you yawned, which, by the way, you're suddenly very paranoid about doing. Historians still argue whether Mesopotamians fully separated physical and spiritual health, or if they believed every ache had an angry spirit attached. Either way, your symptoms are now someone else's spiritual crisis. So what's the first step? You get taken to the local Asapu, a specialist healer, equal parts priest, magician, and nosy neighbor. He wears a long robe, smells faintly of date wine and incense, and doesn't blink nearly enough. His house is cluttered with clay tablets, bowls filled with herbs, bones tied with red string, and one very confused cat. He greets you with a grunt, then squints at your runny nose as if reading an omen in your mucus. The diagnosis? The demon Asaku has found you. Now, Asaku isn't your garden variety sneeze gremlin. In the Sumerian texts, he's a big deal. He causes fevers, dizziness, weakness, and apparently stuffiness. According to one tablet, he dries the bones and darkens the eyes. Basically, he's the equivalent of every cold symptom slammed into one divine horror. You sit on a woven mat while the Asapu starts muttering to the gods. Specifically, he's addressing Enki, god of wisdom and mischief, hoping the divine trickster will outwit the demon making you sniffle. You, meanwhile, are struggling not to sneeze into the ceremonial incense. As the ritual begins, you realize this isn't going to be a quick fix. No one's offering you a lozenge or telling you to rest. Instead, the priest sprinkles flour around you in a tight circle and places a miniature clay statue near your feet. It's vaguely human-shaped, with a weirdly large nose. "This is you," he says. You're flattered. Then he smashes the statue with a stone. Apparently, that's supposed to break the demon's grip on your soul. You glance at your feet, wondering if there's a backup statue, just in case that wasn't enough. A few minutes later, you're handed a small bowl of something warm, thick, and extremely questionable. It smells like wet grass and despair. It's a concoction of dates, garlic, and crushed reeds, and it's supposed to drive out the cold. You sip it. It tastes like pond water with secrets. Fun fact: one real Babylonian cold remedy involved applying oil of cedar, cypress, and juniper to the chest while chanting prayers to Gula, the goddess of healing. It's basically Vicks VapoRub with extra drama. And speaking of drama, the entire household is now whispering about you. You catch phrases like the breath of Namtar and bad omens from the river. You don't know who Namtar is, but based on the way they're lighting a second fire in the courtyard, he's probably not someone you want involved in your immune system. You try to rest on a straw pallet, but every few minutes the priest returns, pokes you with a stick, mutters another prayer, or waves a burning twig near your face. One time, he just stares into your eyes for 10 full seconds and nods solemnly. You're 90% sure he's improvising now. But here's the twist. The Babylonians did have some medical texts that hinted at real patterns. Cuneiform tablets from the library of Ashurbanipal describe symptoms, treatments, and even differential diagnoses. Some illnesses were linked to diet, season, or air, what we now call early attempts at understanding pathogens. Still, this level-headed approach was often wrapped up in ritual. You couldn't just treat the cough, you had to treat the spirit causing the cough. And if that meant sacrificing a goat or chanting through sunrise, so be it. You roll over, sniffling, as someone splashes perfumed water on your feet. A small girl leans in and whispers, "The cold likes dirty souls." You thank her, then quietly regret ever being born. Outside, the moon rises over the Euphrates. The air cools slightly. You feel a tickle in your throat, and somewhere in the shadows, a jackal howls. Or maybe it's just your healer rehearsing a new chant. Either way, this is only the beginning. You wake up to a goat breathing on your face. Not just any goat. This one has been carefully selected by the Asipo for its warm essence and its ability to transfer breath energy, which, in modern terms, translates roughly to, let's see if the goat's snorting helps your sinuses clear up. The priest is crouched beside you, very serious, holding a clay tablet in one hand and an herbal poultice in the other. You must inhale, he says, motioning for the goat to get even closer. You try not to gag. You do gag. The goat sneezes, and it's officially unclear who's treating whom. Welcome to Babylon's version of heat therapy. Your healer believes that the common cold, what they might call a possession of the head channels, can be driven out by warming the body and expelling the evil wind. That's where the hot bricks come in. 2 servants bring in flat slabs of sun-dried clay, heated in a fire pit until they glow faintly red. They wrap the bricks in damp reeds, press them against your chest and back, and cover you in a woolen blanket. It's essentially a Mesopotamian spa day, minus the cucumber water and with significantly more goat breath. Mainstream history confirms that ancient Mesopotamians practiced fumigation, steaming or smoking herbs to treat ailments. Frankincense, myrrh, and bitumen were common. For respiratory issues, warm vapors were considered vital. But instead of steaming bowls or diffusers, they used heated rocks, burnt plant resin, and, on daring days, animal exhalation. You feel honored. Also mildly smoked. One fringe text mentions placing a live pigeon on the forehead to draw out the bad spirit. You ask about it. Your priest frowns. "That's Sumerian nonsense," he mutters, then fetches a jar of something sticky and green. It looks like pesto made by someone with a grudge. He applies it to your temples and the back of your neck. It smells like coriander and crushed onion. This will confuse the demon, he says, as if your cold has a highly developed sense of smell and a short attention span. There's a lull while he waits to see if your breathing changes. You sit quietly, heat radiating from the bricks, goat now resting on your feet like a loyal dog. You sneeze again. The priest sighs. Time for the second phase, herbal smoke and spoken spells. He lights a bundle of dried hyssop and tamarisk. Smoke curls upward, dark and sharp, and he waves it in lazy spirals around your head while chanting lines from the Sherpu incantation series. One line you catch translates roughly to, "May the illness depart like a boat from a riverbank." Romantic, also optimistic. You try to look invested while struggling not to choke on the smoke. He adds more herbs. The room starts to feel like a bar fight between a forest fire and a salad. Suddenly, he stops mid-chant. His eyes narrow. You still feel cold in the nose? You nod. He reaches behind a curtain and pulls out what looks like a rolled-up animal skin. It's not. It's a bundle of dried reeds filled with some kind of spicy powder. He lights one end and instructs you to breathe through the other. One cautious inhale later, your sinuses ignite like a Babylonian firework. You cough, you wheeze, you cry a little. He smiles. Good sign. Historians still argue whether these treatments were meant to actually cure people or just scare the demons into leaving. Considering your recent near-death by spice, you're leaning toward the latter. Later that evening, you're brought a steaming bowl of barley soup infused with mustard seeds and crushed juniper. It's one of the more palatable things you've eaten today. The priest tells you this is for balance, not just to feed your body, but to nourish your ka, your spiritual self. He reminds you to chew slowly, to not let the cold get comfortable. The idea that your cold is settling in like a rude house guest is weirdly accurate. And of course, no treatment would be complete without a follow-up ritual under the moon. You're led outside, wrapped in blankets, placed in a wooden chair facing north. The Asipu draws a protective circle around you using ground bone and oil, then whispers to the sky. You catch phrases like, "Let the night carry the sickness," and "May the stars reject this affliction." One mainstream Babylonian practice involved invoking Sin, the moon god, for nightly healing. The belief was that the cool lunar rays could draw illness out through the skin. You feel ridiculous, but also strangely soothed. The stars overhead shimmer against the inky sky. The priest hums low and slow. Then he slaps a toad on your forehead. Yes, a toad. You're too tired to resist. It's cool, damp, and wildly confused about its role in this ritual. After a few minutes, it's removed and dropped into a clay bowl. The illness is weaker now, your healer says with satisfaction. According to one obscure text, amphibians were believed to absorb poison or trap spirits if placed on the body during ritual cleansing. Whether it worked or not, you're grateful the next step doesn't involve spiders. Back inside, you're given a soft mat to rest. A young girl brings you a reed flute and tells you to play softly to soothe your fever. You try. You wheeze out a warbling note that sounds like a duck in emotional crisis. She claps anyway. Before sleep, your priest returns with a final gift, a tiny clay amulet shaped like a lion's head. Protection, he says, placing on your chest. Lamashtu fears the lion. Lamashtu, by the way, is a demoness blamed for everything from baby fevers to nightmares. She's probably not behind your cold, but then again, no one here is taking chances. You close your eyes, warm, exhausted, still congested, but now encircled by clay lions, goat breath and burnt herbs. The cold hasn't gone yet, but you're beginning to suspect it's scared. It's now day 3 of your Babylonian sniffle saga, and your nose is still doing its best impression of the Euphrates in flood season. This morning, instead of hot bricks or goat-based spa treatments, your Asipo greets you with a clay tablet covered in tightly etched cuneiform and a slightly wicked grin. "We must identify the demon," he says, "by name. Apparently, all the goat's sweat and spicy inhalants in the world won't do much unless the culprit, your personal cold-causing spirit, is properly named and banished." You nod, trying to look courageous while still clutching a hand-woven tissue soaked in juniper oil. You sit on a wooden stool while the priest sets down a series of objects: a black stone, a carved bone, a small copper mirror, and, of course, a pile of dried animal tongues. You don't ask from what. You don't want to know. Naming demons was serious business. In Babylonian culture, names weren't just labels, they were power. Knowing a demon's true name could give the healer leverage, like getting someone's Wi-Fi password in a world of supernatural interference. If you name it, you can command it. At least, that's the hope. The priest waves a palm branch over your head and begins listing known culprits. Could be Ahazu, the Caesar of breath, or perhaps Idba, lord of heat and drainage. Maybe even Tirigu, the whispering one. You cough. He pauses. Or possibly Lugal Sutta, who hides behind nostrils and whispers illness into the brain. Yes, that one sounds disturbingly on brand. But here's the thing. Historians still argue whether these names were actual metaphysical entities, metaphors, or simply useful handles for grouping symptoms. Some scholars see these demons as the ancient world's version of head cold, flu, migraine, and so on. Others think they genuinely believed in sneaky little monsters messing with their lungs. Regardless, you're now getting the full name-based exorcism treatment. The priest dips a reed stylus into ink made of soot and pomegranate rind, then writes the name Lugal Sutta on a shard of clay. He holds it up to your forehead, whispers something unintelligible, then tosses it into a small fire pit. Flames flare. The goat bleats in alarm. "Now the demon knows we know," he says ominously. As you wonder what happens if you spell the name wrong, a temple assistant arrives with your next remedy: protective chant layering. You're laid flat on your back while the Asipus circles you, chanting line after line in Sumerian and Akkadian. Some are soft lullabies. Others sound like threats. One of them might be a recipe for lentil stew. You're too dazed to be sure. Between chants, he rubs warm oil across your chest. The oil smells of cedar and frankincense. It tingles slightly. "We speak to the demon through your skin," he explains. At this point, you feel like a haunted tea kettle. You catch a glimpse of a stone carving on the wall, a wide-eyed figure with claws, fangs, and a lion's head. The infamous Yugalu, or Big Weather Demon. Fun fact, Yugalu was one of the protectors against illness, particularly against Lamish II, who we mentioned earlier. You mentally add Yugalu versus Lamish II to your list of dream matchups. You fall asleep during the third round of chanting and wake to find a circle of reeds placed around your head. It's symbolic, you're told, trapping the demon's breath before it can crawl out through your ears. A fringe Babylonian belief held that demons often escaped the body by riding the final exhale. So some patients were even suffocated gently and revived again, just to interrupt the exit strategy. Luckily, your Asipu prefers the less murdery route. Good for him. Good for you. Later, your healer consults the stars again. He unfurls a cloth painted with constellations, each shape corresponding to a known spirit or divine influence. He squints at Jupiter. The demon was summoned during a bad conjunction, which is basically ancient Babylonian for "you're sick because your horoscope was trash." Babylonians were firm believers in celestial medicine. If the stars weren't in your favor, you could be fated to illness, even if you did everything right. Astrologers worked hand in hand with healers, analyzing where Mars and Venus were hanging out to determine the strength and duration of your suffering. It's astrology, but with more math and slightly more goat entrails. You're instructed not to eat onions tonight. Saturn is too close, and not to speak any names backwards. You don't want to accidentally summon another demon. Your evening meal is light, barley mash and fig paste. Your throat still feels like sandpaper, but your fever has eased slightly. By candlelight, the Asipu presents you with a small clay amulet shaped like a wedge. On it is inscribed a single word, Ursitu, the name of the underworld. We show it to the demon, he says, to remind him where he belongs. Then he ties the amulet around your neck. You're beginning to feel less like a patient and more like a supernatural hostage negotiation. You try to sleep, but your mind is racing. What if the demon gets mad? What if you've been blaming Lugal Sutta and it's actually a Hazu all along? What if you're not sick at all, just cursed by that girl whose sandals you accidentally stepped on 3 days ago? These are the thoughts you drift off with as a soft breeze ruffles the reed mat, and somewhere in the distance, a night priest sings to the stars. You wake to a rhythmic sloshing sound and the distinct scent of garlic boiling in something vaguely fishy. Morning in Babylon, and your recovery is debatable. The fever has gone down, but your throat still scratches like a clay tablet etched by an angry scribe. Before you can even sit up, your now familiar Asapa swoops in, eyes gleaming with purpose. Time for Enki's remedy, he says, as though you've been begging for it in your sleep. He places a steaming bowl beside you and hands you a crooked reed straw. Floating in the bowl, honeycomb chunks, flecks of crushed garlic, tiny dried fish skins, a powder you can only assume is frog foot, and something alarmingly yellow. You hesitate. He taps the rim. Drink. This, you're told, is an ancient brew of divine origin, inspired by Enki himself, god of wisdom, fresh water, magic, and apparently amateur pharmacy. Enki, in Mesopotamian mythology, was said to create humans from clay and fill rivers with life-giving water. He's also credited with inventing potions to heal and purify both body and spirit. You take a sip. The taste is bold, sweet, bitter, and overwhelmingly pond adjacent. But you keep sipping, mostly because the Asipu is watching you like a teacher watching a particularly lazy student take a test. Mainstream Babylonian medical texts like the Diagnostic Handbook, aka Sakiku, describe mixtures of honey, oils, and pulverized plant matter used to treat respiratory conditions. Some treatments also included animal parts, usually powdered bone, liver, or even skin. In your case, it seems they've opted for the greatest hits remix. While you sip, your healer prepares a second mixture, a paste of crushed mint, dried fig seeds, and beer foam. He smears it gently across your chest and neck with a flat bone blade, murmuring as he works. The potion draws out, he says. The paste locks away. There's a certain hypnotic rhythm to the process. Apply, chant, pause, apply again. Your breathing deepens. You're still congested, but the slow, careful pressure of the bone tool is oddly soothing. Like Mesopotamian ASMR. Outside the room, A servant begins heating flat stones and scattering herbs across them to release vapors. A warm, camphor-like scent fills the space: juniper, hyssop, and something earthy, probably tamarisk. You can almost feel your sinuses twitching. Then comes the part you weren't expecting. You're invited to speak directly to your illness. The Asipu hands you a small carved statuette, barely the size of your thumb. It's vaguely humanoid, with exaggerated nostrils and a drooping posture. "This is the spirit of your sickness," he says. "You must address it." He kneels beside you. "Tell it why I must leave." You blink. "Now." He nods. So you try. "Hello, spirit? I'm very tired. You made your point. Please go." The Asipud doesn't blink. You continue, channeling your most polite inner rage. "I don't know what I did, but I'm sorry. I offer this statue as a home for you. Just move into it and leave my throat alone." A beat of silence. The Asipu raises his hands and chants a verse from the Maklu, a ritual series against witchcraft and demons. "May the sickness that dwells in your bones return to the dust. May its breath be sealed in clay." He seals the statuette inside a small clay jar, plugs it with a lump of wax, and buries it under the hearth. Some fringe scholars believe this container exorcism was a symbolic burial of disease, essentially tricking the illness into a new body and locking it away. You feel like you've just completed a very awkward breakup with your own mucus. Later that afternoon, you're escorted to the temple's small herbal courtyard. You're handed a drink that tastes faintly of cardamom and despair. It's meant to lift the spirit, and to be fair, you do feel lighter, possibly because your body is rejecting all solids at this point. You're seated beneath a woven canopy while a temple attendant fans you lazily with palm fronds. She offers a small tray of dried dates and goat cheese. "Enki's energy flows best on a full belly," she explains. "Your cold remains, but it feels weaker, less like a demon clinging to your lungs and more like a sulky tenant packing its bags." You're also starting to enjoy the hospitality. There's something calming about the ancient rhythm of ritual and rest, of chanting and poultices. Sure, you've consumed more mystery meat and hot garlic liquid than you'd like to admit, but feels like progress. Still, not everyone is convinced. A neighboring Baru, a diviner, shows up to offer a second opinion. He's all sharp robes and sharper questions. "What color is your phlegm? Did you see any dogs in your dreams last night? Have you stepped on cursed footprints recently?" You say yes to the dream. There was a dog. It was riding a boat and whispering threats. The Baru nods solemnly. Lugal Sutta travels by boat. The Asipus scoffs. Nonsense. It was clearly a vision of Enki's messenger. The two begin to argue, quietly but intensely, in a mix of Sumerian and eye rolls. Historians still argue whether Babylonian healers and diviners worked in harmony or were always trying to one-up each other, like ancient Yelp reviewers. Either way, you get extra soup out of it. As the sun begins to set, your healer returns for one last ritual of the day. He traces a spiral on your forehead with a finger dipped in honey. The spiral, he says softly, represents the body uncoiling from illness. You smile despite yourself. Your breathing is still rough, your nose still red, but the weight in your chest feels a little lighter. Maybe it's a magic. Maybe it's the honey. Maybe it's the frogfoot potion doing a slow burn. Either way, you fall asleep that night to the sound of wind whispering through palm leaves, your chest tingling with warmth, and a faint scent of burn myrrh trailing through the air like a forgotten lullaby. You wake up to mud. Not in your mouth, thankfully, though given the last few days, you wouldn't have been surprised. No, this time, you're in the mud. Up to your chest. Cool riverbank clay hugs your torso like a wet, squishy tunic, and every inch of you smells faintly of damp earth and smoked sage. Your healer crouches beside you, pleased. The river cleanses what the air cannot, he says. And mud listens. You're not sure what that last part means, but you're in no position to argue. This is the mud therapy portion of your treatment, and yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. You're stuck in a custom-dug pit beside the Tigris, buried to your armpits in healing sludge, while local priests debate whether Mercury or Saturn made your throat feel like gravel. Babylonians believed rivers were divine, extensions of gods like Enki and Ea. That meant river mud carried sacred properties. It could nourish, protect, and purify. Real cuneiform prescriptions for Mesopotamia even mention mud from under reeds, mud from near the city gate, or black mud from the bottom of the canal. Each type had different magical vibes, depending on where it was sourced and which deity had blessed it. Yours, apparently, is first light silt gathered at sunrise. It's cold, gritty, and clinging to your ribs like it plans to stay. You sneeze. A small fish blinks at you from a nearby puddle. You begin to suspect it's judging your life choices. While you stew in your swampy cocoon, the priest consults an assistant holding a star chart painted onto animal hide. They're trying to determine whether today is an auspicious day to drain damp humors from the body. This involves much discussion of lunar phases and which planet is in which house. Historians still argue whether Mesopotamian astrology was used as pure superstition or if it formed a legitimate part of early medical decision-making. The line between the stars are aligned and wait till tomorrow or you'll die horribly was, let's say, flexible. Eventually, the stars give you a thumbs up. It's time to transition from mud therapy to sacred drying. You're hoisted gently onto a bed of reeds laid out beneath an awning. The sun is high now, baking your mud-coated skin into something resembling a half-baked cookie. A priestess sprinkles crushed rose petals and ash over your arms and forehead. This pleases Ninlil, she says, referring to the goddess of wind and healing breezes. As the mud cracks and dries, you're instructed not to move. The sickness is trapped inside the clay, someone whispers. If you shift too early, it might escape. You lie there for hours, still and sun-drenched, listening to the soft rush of the river and the distant cry of herons. For once, no one's rubbing weird oils on you or chanting directly into your face. It's peaceful in a crumbly kind of way. Eventually, they wash you clean with river water infused with crushed date pits and chamomile. Your skin tingles. Your head is still foggy, but something's shifted. You're breathing through both nostrils for the first time in 3 days. You're led back to the temple compound and allowed to rest in the Garden of Breath, a small shaded space filled with mint, hyssop, and reeds that whistle faintly in the wind. You're told to meditate on your sickness. Instead, you watch a bee try and fail to pollinate a carved stone flower. Later, your healer returns with a clay figurine of a snake coiled around a staff. The breath channels are pathways, he says, like rivers, and snakes know how to find their way through. Snakes were potent symbols in Mesopotamian healing. They represented transformation, rebirth, and secret knowledge. Enki himself was often associated with serpent imagery. In some temples, priests even kept live snakes and would bring them to patients during healing ceremonies. Thankfully, your healer sticks to the clay version. Now comes the test. You're given a scroll made of bark, and asked to write down the names of all your symptoms. Not verbally, physically, with a stylus. The demon loses power when named by the hand of the afflicted, your healer explains. Your handwriting is awful. Your spelling worse. You manage to scratch out cough, scratchy throat, drip of face, and what might be unbearable goat proximity. The priest nods solemnly and buries the scroll beneath a pomegranate tree. Then you're handed a cup of barley beer and told to drink until you feel dizzy, but not too dizzy, because now it's time for the next treatment, controlled hallucination. You lie in a reed tent while the Asipo burns herbs known to induce dreams, blue lotus, poppy, and maybe just a little bit of whatever Babylonian grandma kept in her for emergencies only basket. The smoke is thick. Your mind slips sideways, and suddenly you're floating. You see yourself from above, sniffling, muddied, half-conscious, but glowing faintly around the chest. There's a tiny figure made of black threads squatting on your shoulder. You hear it whisper something, but the words dissolve before they reach your ear. Then a lion roars, not in your ear, but in your gut. You feel warmth spread through your body like fire through reeds. The thread figure vanishes. The dream fades. You wake up to find the priest nodding, impressed. You saw the illness spirit, he says. It knows you're awake now. Was it real? Probably not. Did it work? Well, you feel better. Your chest is looser. Your nose, for once, not leaking. And most importantly, you're hungry. Genuinely hungry. You devour a bowl of lentils and honey like someone who hasn't spent 4 days being smoked like fish jerky. Night falls, and you're allowed to sleep under a fresh blanket with a small oil lamp flickering beside you. The breeze carries a whisper of tamarisk and wet clay. Somewhere, a temple drummer taps out a slow rhythm. And for the first time since your arrival, your dreams are quiet. You're dreaming beneath a sacred fig tree. Not just any tree. This one stands inside the temple courtyard, ringed by offerings, clay figurines, sprigs of fresh mint, and a cracked bowl of something that smells suspiciously like fermented turnips. The branches rustle gently above your head, despite the still night air. You're wrapped in a light reed blanket. Your nose isn't dripping. Your throat doesn't burn. And, miracle of miracles, your chest rises and falls with ease. You're not healed, not entirely, but the weight is lifting. According to the Asipo, now is the most delicate stage of your recovery. The body has resisted the demon, but your spirit is still catching up. The illness can retreat into your dreams. He explains to wait. So tonight, the treatment is simple. You sleep. But not just anywhere. You're placed beneath this specific tree because it's been blessed by priests and watered with river water on festival days. Dreams that happen here are believed to reveal the next step in your healing, or the next demon lurking in the shadows. Sleep facing the moon. You're instructed. Let Enki see your breath. There's something oddly comforting about it all. Yes, you're still surrounded by strange smells, ritual whispers, and the occasional goat. But at this point, it's become your normal. Even the dried fisheye poultices don't faze you anymore. You lie back, close your eyes, and drift off to the soft hum of temple wind chimes. And you dream. Not in the sharp, vivid style of last night's hallucinogenic experience, but softer, gentler. You're walking beside the Euphrates. There's a child ahead of you, holding a clay pot full of light. When she turns around, her face is yours, but younger. She whispers something you don't understand, then vanishes. You wake with tears on your face and a strange sense of calm. The Asipal listens carefully as you describe the vision. He nods. The sickness has passed through your blood and into your memory. It's leaving you now. He writes something down on a clay tablet and places it at the foot of the fig tree. You're to rest again tonight. One more dream. Dream diagnosis was a real thing in ancient Babylon. There were entire tablets dedicated to interpreting them, called dream omens. If you dreamed of a bird, good sign. Dreamed of drowning? Very bad. Dreamed of eating onions? Confusing. Some dreams were believed to be direct messages from the gods, others signs of demonic trickery. Historians still argue whether these interpretations were standardized across temples or made up on the spot by whichever priest had the most convincing voice. Either way, tonight your job is simply to rest. So the temple prepares the space again, new mats, new incense, and this time, a tiny bell tied around your wrist. If you stir in distress, the priest says the bell will ring and wake you. You fall asleep to the scent of myrrh and orange blossom, and this time you dream of silence. A vast field, wind brushing over tall grain. No demons, no children, just you and the hum of something ancient and kind beneath your feet. When you wake, the Asipu is already there, watching your face for signs of tension. There are none. He smiles. You are between worlds now. The worst is behind. But just in case, there's still a bit more ritual. The next treatment is something called breath tracing. A fine reed dipped in cinnamon oil is passed slowly across your nostrils, lips, throat, and chest. With each pass, you're told to take a deep breath and release it slowly. We must make sure the demon has not left anything behind. It's strangely meditative. The priest hums as he works, a low droning note that syncs with the rhythm of your breathing. You feel your heartbeat slow, your limbs relax. Then comes the dream journal. Yes, they hand you a clay tablet and stylus and ask you to scratch out last night's visions. Dreams are maps, the assistant explains. If you get sick again, we will return to this point. The priest even makes you draw it. Your dream field, your younger self, the clay pot of light. Your artistic skills are somewhere between potato and disaster, but no one criticizes. They nod seriously, like you've just submitted a thesis. Some fringe scholars believe that Babylonian temples kept long-term sickness diaries on patients, written in a mix of symbols and metaphors. Each entry might describe the behavior of the illness over time through symptoms, dreams, and mood shifts. In other words, your emoji-filled day planner, but clay. That afternoon, you're brought to the upper courtyard and given a seat beside a pool of still water. You're told to stare into it and watch your reflection for signs of returning winds. You look tired, sure, but healthy-ish. The final test, your voice. You're asked to recite a line of an old hymn, something in praise of Enlil, the air god. If your voice is clear, says the priest, you are ready. You manage it. Mostly. Your voice cracks, but it's audible. Strong. You feel something shift again, like the final thread of the illness has snapped and floated away on the wind. As night falls, you're not placed under the fig tree. This time, you're offered a private chamber inside the temple. A simple space with smooth walls, woven blankets, and a tiny lamp flickering in the corner. No bells, no chanting, just you and sleep. You awaken in a room that smells of lamp oil and dust. Familiar, but not oppressive. For the first time since this Babylonian odyssey began, you don't feel like you're being watched by a fever spirit or stalked by a goat with a career in respiratory therapy. No incense, no smoke, no chanting from the next room. Just stillness. The Asapu enters quietly, carrying a polished bronze mirror and a small clay cup. "Time for your final evaluation," he says. His tone is different now. Less priest, more physician. It's the tone of someone who knows they've done all they can, and now it's up to fate or the gods or whatever passes for the immune system in 2000 BCE. You take the mirror. Your reflection is haggard, but not haunted. Your eyes aren't red. Your lips are no longer cracked. And the voice that greets the priest with a hoarse, "Good morning," is your own, not some demon-possessed croak from the underworld. "Good," he says, handing you the cup. It's full of thick, sweet wine laced with bitter herbs. A final offering to the gods of return. Because that's what healing means here, not just surviving the illness, but returning. To community, to self, to the rhythm of daily life, which you've been very dramatically yanked out of for the last several days. You sip the wine, cough a little, but feel its warmth settle into your chest like a hug from someone who still believes in talismans and moonlight. You're taken outside, where a small group has gathered. A priestess paints your wrists with stripes of ochre and barley juice, symbols of health and strength. A child hands you a woven band, which you tie around your neck. "This keeps the sickness from remembering you," she whispers. Mainstream Babylonian healing ceremonies often ended in public, symbolic rituals meant to show that the patient had rejoined the living. Some texts describe small processions, songs, or offerings at city gates. Others mention simple signs: a painted face, a new tunic, a shared meal. In your case, it's bread. Fresh, still warm, soft in the middle, and crusted with date sugar. You tear into it like someone who hasn't eaten properly in days. Which, frankly, you haven't. Someone hands you a figure. Another gives you water from a ceremonial bowl. Then comes the closing rite. You're led to the shrine of Gula, the goddess of healing and restoration. Her statue stands tall, made of dark stone, eyes inlaid with shell and lapis lazuli. In one hand she holds a dog, her sacred animal, in the other a stylus. A symbol that healing is a record, a story, something written. You kneel. The Asapu places a hand on your shoulder and recites a final prayer. O Gula, who binds the bones, who soothes the breath, whose dogs lick the wounds of kings and beggars alike. Carry this spirit safely beyond the door of sickness. He places a tiny dog figurine in your palm. You're to keep it for 7 days. If your symptoms return, you must burn it. It's not just a token, he says. It's a contract. You bow to the statue. You don't entirely believe, but after what you've endured, it doesn't seem that strange to thank a divine woman with a lapdog and a healing kit. But before you're allowed to leave the temple, one final step remains: the cleansing of the name. Remember Lugal Sutta, your personal snot demon from earlier? Yeah, he's about to get ghosted. The Asapu prepares a small clay tablet and writes the demon's name across it one last time. Then he smashes it with a hammer. Not delicately, with gusto. Shards fly. Someone cheers softly. Now, the priest says he has no name here. He cannot find you again. Historians still argue whether this final gesture was truly meant to erase the demon or simply mark the end of a healing cycle. Either way, the symbolism is potent. You feel like a page has turned, a chapter closed. Before you go, the priest presses a final gift into your hands, a rolled reed scroll with a list of maintenance behaviors. You read through it. No cold water for 3 days. No onions after sunset. Don't sleep facing west. Avoid loud singing. Avoid people who yawn too wide. And absolutely no walking under figs on odd-numbered days. You promise to try. You pass through the temple gate with a small crowd of onlookers watching, some familiar, others curious. You nod, you smile, and even though your legs are a bit wobbly and your clothes still smell faintly of roasted cedar and river slime, you feel new. You've gone nose to nose with Mesopotamian medicine. You've been smoked, steamed, smeared, buried, blessed, and mildly traumatized by amphibians. But you've made it. You're free, at least until next sneeze. You leave the temple slowly, your feet still adjusting to the firm dirt path outside the sacred walls. The air feels different now, warmer, lighter, maybe just a little smug. It's the air of a survivor, a patient who's officially been declared demon-free, at least by Mesopotamian standards. You glance back once, half expecting your Asapud to call you back for one last chant, one more clay token, maybe an emergency sprinkle of powdered snake lung. But no, he just watches you from the gate, arms folded, chin tilted, nodding slowly like a shepherd watching a very congested lamb rejoin the flock. You're on your own now, and honestly, that's a little terrifying, because Babylonian healing didn't just focus on the body. It emphasized reintegration into society. You were sick not just physically, but cosmically unbalanced. To be well again was to reclaim your role. In your household, your city, your faith. The common cold wasn't just a personal inconvenience. It was a ripple in the order of things. So here you are, not just a patient, a returning soul. People notice you. They nod, smile. Some leave offerings at your feet. Figs, a sprig of wormwood, a small feather painted gold. For continued balance, a man says as he passes, so the wind does not return. You thank him, tuck the feather behind your ear, and keep walking. By midday, you've returned to your own household. It's strange how familiar it feels, and how distant. You've only been gone a few days, maybe a week, but everything feels different. The floor you swept, the cushion you coughed on, even the bowl you used to eat lentils from now feels haunted, not literally, just faintly echoing with who you were when you left. So the first thing you do, you burn your bed straw. Not because the Asapa told you to, he didn't, but because it feels right. You pile the old blanket, the used reed mat, even the cup you sip ginger mint brew from. You light it carefully, whisper a quick good riddance, and watch the smoke rise. And with it, something leaves you. That evening, as the sun sets and the city's rooftop fires begin to twinkle like stars that forgot to climb high, you do something unexpected. You return to the river, not for a bath, not for a mud cocoon or a sacred reed washing, just to sit, barefoot, toes in the silt, arms resting on knees. The same river whose water washed your fever, the same river whose mud clung to your skin. And now it's just water again. A child approaches and offers you a piece of fig bread. You accept it, break off a piece, and offer some back. You smell like cedar, she says. Did you fall in the temple fire? You laugh. Something like that. She runs off, leaving you alone again. You chew slowly. You swallow. No cough. No sting. Just sweetness and the wind in the reeds. Later that night, your dreams return, but not of demons. You're standing in a hall of mirrors, polished bronze, obsidian, dark water. Each reflection is you, but slightly different, coughing, sleeping, chanting, sneezing with such force you knock over a goat. You laugh in your sleep, and when you wake, it's with clarity. You remember every odd remedy, every chant, every spell meant to confuse a spirit that lived in your lungs. And somehow it all makes sense now. Maybe it wasn't about driving out a demon. Maybe it was about inviting yourself back in. Because sickness in this ancient world wasn't just a battle. It was a conversation, a reckoning, a reminder that your body is not just meat and bones, but story, symbol, and spell. You stretch, you breathe deeply, and the breath doesn't hurt anymore. So you begin your morning with the same ritual you watch the priest do. You pour a little water on the earth. Not for the gods, not even for the illness. Just to say, I'm here, I made it, and I know how to return. The fire crackles softly now, fading into embers as the city of Babylon quiets around you. The sky above glows faintly, just a trace of stars behind the drifting smoke of oil lamps and temple incense. The streets are empty. The goats have stopped arguing with the night. Even the river has gone quiet, as if honoring your final exhale. You feel your breath settle, deeper now, slower, unforced. Whatever spirit once clung to your ribs is gone. Maybe banished, maybe just bored. Either way, it doesn't matter. You've done the work. You've shown up for every strange ritual, every cracked clay charm, every mouthful of bitter broth and awkward conversation with a fever god. And now you're warm, wrapped in the scent of herbs and dusk, safe under the weight of a blanket you didn't realize you missed. Sleep is waiting, not with urgency, but invitation. The kind of sleep that curls into you like a reed mat drying under the sun. The kind of rest that remembers how your breath once struggled and holds it steady now. So close your eyes. Let your body drift into that soft rhythm again. Let the stars watch over you. And if, by chance, a tiny demon spirit tiptoes by your window tonight, let it see the quiet strength behind your eyelids. Let it know there's no room for it here anymore. You're home, and you're whole.